Man, what's the most stable thing you can do to impress a girl? I've never had a story in my life where I felt like I had everything together. I want it so badly. I want my first chance, my every piece of home, but I can never seem to get a handle on things. Then it all falls apart again and again. Tommy, I thought. I had my head buried in books, scribbling down notes at lightning speed. I made sure to write down every fair point in those books, making sure my writing was neat, hoping it would make a difference. I wanted to be the one she looked at with admiration. I thought I'd finally gotten it. I saw it as a classic response. But then, she hit me with a million more questions. That was the third time. That's when I realized. That's it. That's what's been happening. I've been trying to figure everything out. Every time, before she can even catch on, I feel like I'm back at square one. Trying to impress her, trying to prove myself. I get caught up in the pressure and end up chasing my own tail. And that's when it happens. Tommy stared blankly at the mess of notes scattered across his desk. His thoughts raced, but no matter how hard he tried to focus, they always seemed to circle back to the same confusing point. He leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last conversation he'd had with her. The way she smiled, how her eyes sparkled when she asked him those questions, those million questions that felt like a test. A test he wasn't sure he passed. She was different. She wasn't like anyone else he'd ever met. And for some reason, every time he tried to impress her, it only made things worse. That realization hit him harder than he expected. He wasn't sure what it was, but something about her made him feel exposed, as if all the walls he'd built up over the years came crumbling down in her presence. That's it, Tommy muttered to himself, his fingers drumming lightly on the edge of the desk. I'm overthinking everything. I just need to be me. He glanced at the open notebook in front of him, where he'd scribbled down ideas on how to impress her. Gifts, clever lines, even a playlist of songs that he thought might catch her interest. It all felt so artificial now. Forced. Tommy stood up, the chair squeaking as it moved. He walked over to the window, watching the rain drizzle down, coating the streets in a soft shimmer. The city was alive, but in his little apartment, things felt quiet. Too quiet. He needed to clear his head, to think, to find out why he cared so much about what she thought of him. Was it love? He didn't know for sure. All he knew was that every time he saw her, his heart did this strange dance, and every word out of her mouth seemed to stick in his mind for hours after. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw her name light up. Hey, Tommy, are you free? I was wondering if you'd like to grab coffee later. His heart leapt. This was it, another chance. But this time, he wasn't going to overthink it. He wasn't going to try and impress her with rehearsed lines or clever tricks. He was just going to be himself. Maybe that's all it ever needed to be, he thought. Tommy grabbed his jacket and made his way to the coffee shop. The moment he stepped inside, the warmth of the place hit him, a sharp contrast to the chilly rain outside. She was already there, sitting at a small table by the window, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. When she saw him, she smiled, that same smile that had been etched into his memory. Hey, she said softly as he sat down. Hey, he responded, and for the first time, he wasn't nervous. He didn't feel the need to prove anything. They started talking, and instead of filling the gaps with forced conversation, they let the silences breathe. And in those moments of silence, Tommy realized something. He didn't need to impress her. She liked him as he was, flaws, awkwardness, and all. The more they talked, the more he felt the weight of his previous worries lift. As the evening wore on, they laughed, shared stories, and just existed in the same space without any pressure. And for the first time in a long time, Tommy felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. When they left the coffee shop, the rain had stopped, and the night sky was clear, dotted with stars. They walked side by side, neither of them in a rush to get anywhere. Tommy didn't need grand gestures or rehearsed lines. This was enough. She was enough. And maybe, just maybe, he was enough too.